You can tell when something's wrong by the way silence hums. That afternoon, as I turned into my gravel drive, the quiet didn't feel welcoming. It felt occupied, like someone had replaced the peaceful solitude of my forest cabin with a cheap imitation. Pine trees bowed over my property like old friends holding their breath. My tires crackled over the gravel, 3 days earlier than anyone expected me. I'd planned a weekend of bourbon and bird calls after my consulting gig in Chicago. That job had gone belly up thanks to corporate politics, but I didn't mind. I missed home. I missed stillness. The moment I saw the unfamiliar SUV parked like it owned the damn driveway, my stomach went cold. I killed the engine, left the suitcase. My boots hit the earth with a deliberate crunch. The cabin was unlocked. Let me repeat that. Unlocked. I stepped inside and stopped. For a second, I thought I had the wrong house. There was noise, loud, careless noise, coming from every corner. My leather sofa had a man sunk halfway into it, bare feet propped on the coffee table like it was his grandmother's. He didn't look up, just kept flipping through channels like he was trying to find his childhood. Down the hall, a kid's voice shouted into a headset, arguing about loot boxes or headshots, probably while sitting in my office chair or my desk. In the kitchen, a teenager, mid-teens, maybe, was elbow deep in my cereal box, standing in front of an open fridge like she paid the electric bill. And taped to the refrigerator, as if this were a summer rental, was a handwritten note. Help tidy up and change the lock for safety. Best wishes, M. Albright, HOA president. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. Because this wasn't just trespassing. This wasn't a squatter. This was a hostile takeover, done with sugar-sweet handwriting and HOA letterhead. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw her. Madeline Albright, the self-appointed queen of our neighborhood association, stood in the doorway holding my glass of iced tea like it was some kind of peace offering. Her face lit up in mock surprise, as if I were the unexpected guest crashing her weekend getaway. "Well, this is awkward," she said, already pulling out her phone. "What the hell are you?" I started. She cut me off with one wag of her perfectly manicured finger. "I don't feel safe," she said, loudly, clearly, for the benefit of the living room audience. Then she pressed dial. "Hello." "Yes. I'd like to report a man breaking into my home. He's yelling. He's aggressive. He's refusing to leave." I blinked. I laughed, too loud and sharp. "You're calling the cops on me?" "In my house." She turned her back on me like I was a pest. "Yes, officer. 237 Alpine Road. Please hurry." The click of her phone, ending the call, sounded like a countdown. And just like that, the air went still again. Only this time, the silence didn't hum. It screamed. I pulled out my own phone with shaking hands, started filming. My heart was thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "This is my property," I said into the lens. "She's broken in. She has no right to be here." The man on the couch rolled his eyes. The girl in the kitchen crunched louder. Madeline gave a theatrical sigh. "You know, Greg, if you'd just stayed on your little work trip, this wouldn't have been necessary." I froze. She knew I'd been gone. She planned this. Then I heard the distant wail of sirens. And suddenly, I wasn't a homeowner anymore. I was the intruder in my own life. The police cruiser pulled in just as the afternoon shadows lengthened across the porch. 2 officers stepped out, both young, both wide-eyed at the sight of Madeline Albright waving from my front steps like a Southern belle at a parade. "This way, officers," she called out, her voice trembling with rehearsed fear. "He's still inside." I stepped out slowly, both hands raised. Phone still recording. I didn't know what else to do. One of the officers, Officer Graves, by his badge, raised a palm. "Sir, we got a call about a potential break-in. Can we see some ID?" "I live here," I said, my voice catching. "This is my cabin. My name's Gregory Thomas. I've got the deed, the utility bills mail addressed to me, which he conveniently had time to forge." Madeline cut in, smug and smooth. She gestured to the teenagers now lurking behind the screen door, gawking like it was reality TV. "He's been unstable for months." The HOA had to step in. That word again. HOA. Like it was some sort of legal badge she could flash. "Ma'am, if you could step aside for a moment," Officer Graves said gently. "Let's talk to him." Madeline did, but not before offering a final poisoned look, equal parts pity and triumph. I reached into my truck, careful and slow, and handed them a folder I'd kept in the glove compartment ever since I bought the place. Inside, the title deed, my ID, tax receipts, and a few recent electric bills. The officers flipped through the pages in silence. "Appreciate you being cooperative," Graves said, "but she also gave us documentation." He turned to his partner, who held up a crisp letter with a very official-looking seal. I stepped forward and took one look at the header and font. "That's fake," I said flatly. She used the HOA template from a different notice. "I've seen it before. It's a community newsletter font, not a legal document." Graves rubbed his jaw. "Can't confirm that right now." "Then what?" I asked. "You believe her over me because she printed something on fancy paper? She also says you're under foreclosure proceedings, that this place is technically abandoned." I blinked. "What?" "My mortgage is current." "There's no—" "She tore up the mail he gave us," the other officer interrupted, voice neutral. "Said it was fake." I nearly laughed again. "And you just let her do that?" The air turned stiff. Nobody answered. "We're not making accusations right now," Graves said carefully. "But this is messy. We're going to need to file a report and contact the county office." "So what happens now?" I asked. Graves looked uncomfortable. "Until we verify ownership and legal occupancy, we're asking you to vacate for 24 hours. It felt like a punch to the throat. "You're kicking me out of my own home," I said quietly. He looked down. "Just for the night." I checked into a budget motel off the highway. The kind of place where the front desk doesn't make eye contact and the wallpaper peels at the corners. The room reeked of mildew and stale coffee. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed and stared at nothing. That's when the helplessness curdled into rage. She planned this. She timed this. Madeline Albright didn't just overstep her HOA role. She ambushed me. I needed help. I called Leo. He answered on the second ring. "Greg, you okay?" "Leo," she kicked me out. She called the cops. Said I was breaking into my own cabin. "What?" "She had fake papers. Claimed I was being foreclosed." They gave her the benefit of the doubt. A pause. Then, low and angry, "We're going to fight this." I laughed bitterly. "You still have trouble tying your tie." "Yeah, but I've got teeth now." "Law school gave me claws." A long silence passed between us. Then Leo said, "Do you have any proof?" "Photos, anything." I took a short video. "It's not much, but post it," he said. "Tell your story. Let people see it. Sometimes the court of public opinion moves faster than the legal one." I hesitated. Then I uploaded it. Not out of strategy, out of fury. That night, the video exploded. By morning, the internet had given her a name, HOA Karen. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, I woke to a dead phone battery and over 400 missed notifications. I charged it in the motel bathroom, standing in stale air as the buzzing began. Twitter reposts, Facebook tags, Reddit threads. People had picked it up. Commentators, influencers, podcasters. The words HOA Karen had become a wildfire across timelines. The video was grainy, just a minute-long clip of me standing in my own living room while strangers loafed on my couch and a woman tried to dial 911 on me. But something about it hit a nerve. Maybe it was the absurdity. Maybe it was the ice-cold injustice. Maybe people just needed a new villain. The comments were a chorus of disbelief and fury. "She called the cops on the homeowner." "HOA equals harass our actual neighbors." "That poor dude looks like he's in a Twilight Zone episode." People were digging, posting about their own run-ins with overreaching HOA tyrants. A subreddit popped up overnight. Hashtag Justice for Greg started trending. Leo called me with his voice full of caffeine and fire. "This is good," he said. "The more public it is, the harder it is for them to bury it." "But public doesn't mean legal," I reminded him. "She still has me locked out." "She won't for long." That afternoon, I drove into town. Needed air, movement, sanity. I walked into the bakery near Main Street to get coffee, and the woman behind the counter froze mid-pour. "You're the guy from the cabin video, right?" she whispered. I nodded. She handed me my drink for free. "My cousin lives 2 blocks from that HOA. Said that woman's been power-tripping for years." That's when it started. One by one, strangers began messaging me. Anonymous accounts. Burners. Neighbors who had once rolled their eyes when I complained about Madeline now whispered back with their own stories. One stood out. A direct message from an unfamiliar handle, Sunset Ghost 88. She's done this before. Look up Sunset Estates, HOA. Ask for Gary. Attached was a blurry photo of a typed letter. Same tone, same language, same forged header. I sent it to Leo. This could be nothing, I said, but Leo was already digging. That evening, we made the drive. 2 hours south, past dry fields and old highway diners until we reached Sunset Estates, a quiet neighborhood that looked like time had passed it by. The signs were faded, yards overgrown, but the silence felt heavy. We found Gary at the edge of the neighborhood, tending to a limp flower bed. Thin, wary, looked like a man who'd tried hard to disappear. You hear about Madeline? He asked without turning. I nodded. He let out a breath. She's poison and pearls. Inside his modest home, he pulled out a weathered box and placed it on the table like it was radioactive. I used to be HOA secretary here. Thought I could make things better. He opened it. Inside was a red leather notebook, pages stuffed with receipts, emails, handwritten timelines. She made enemies vanish. Bank accounts disappear. Construction bids rerouted to ghost companies. And every time someone questioned her, she had a crisis to distract them. She planned this, I muttered, flipping through. She always does, Gary said. Your cabin? Just her last chess move. Why'd you keep all this? Leo asked. Gary looked down. Because I lost everything, job, marriage, reputation. But I couldn't lose the truth, too. I looked at him, this broken man with shaking hands and a trembling voice, and saw my own future if I didn't act. She hadn't just trespassed. She'd waged war. And now, I had a weapon of my own. That night, I uploaded a new video. I showed the HOA letter. I mentioned Sunset Estates. I said a name, Gary. I didn't say everything. Not yet. But the public smelled blood. And so did Madeline. By morning, my inbox was filled with new messages. Some were support. Others were threats. And one was a subpoena. Madeline had filed a defamation lawsuit. She was doubling down. So now I had to make a decision. Keep playing defense or go full scorched earth. And for the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. 2 days before the emergency HOA meeting, I stood in front of my cabin again. It looked smaller now, not physically but emotionally. My sanctuary had been hollowed out, occupied, tainted. The porch lights still flickered, as if blinking a message in Morse code. You don't belong here anymore. Madeline's SUV was gone, but I knew better than to think she'd given up. She was preparing. She had her claws in the board, her story crafted, her supporters groomed. People like her never fold. They double down and dare you to push back. Inside the cabin, she'd left behind subtle violations. My bookshelves reorganized. Family photos replaced with floral prints. Even my toothbrush was swapped for a brand she liked. It was psychological warfare, and somehow that rattled me more than a lawsuit. I sat at the kitchen table, red notebooks spread out, Leo pacing behind me like a caged lawyer waiting for court. She's going to come at us hard, he said. Character attacks. False affidavits. She'll make you look like a paranoid squatter with a TikTok addiction. She already did, I muttered. But this time we hit back first. He tapped Gary's notes, 20 pages of dates, figures, and signatures. Then slid over 2 USB drives. What's that? Old HOA meeting recordings. Gary found them on an external hard drive, buried in a box in his shed. I clicked open a file. The audio crackled, and then her voice. Clear, confident, cruel. They're sheep, Gary. You just have to smile and sign with conviction. No one checks anything. They want convenience, not truth. It sent a chill through my spine. Another file, her laughing with someone off mic. I might borrow that cabin while he's away. If the board backs me, who's going to stop me? I slammed the laptop shut. It wasn't just corruption. It was predation, and I'd been an easy mark. Leo leaned in. We dropped this at the HOA meeting. But it has to be perfect. 1 shot, 1 kill. I nodded. The night before the meeting, a knock rattled my motel room door. I opened it, and there he stood, Gary. Pale, eyes sunken. He held a small black envelope in both hands like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I found something else, he whispered. Inside, a thumb drive and an old letter addressed to someone named RF. The writing was hers. It referenced insurance policies, cover names, and something about closing the loop at Alpine before federal eyes catch wind. This is beyond HOA drama, I said. Gary nodded grimly. She was laundering money, funneling it through fake maintenance companies. Sunset Estates was just the first. Leo was right behind me now. You think the feds would bite? Gary met his eyes. They'll tear this whole place apart. I stared down at the thumb drive, heart hammering. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. Resolve. I was done reacting. Now we were writing the ending. The HOA meeting was called for a Friday evening. A cold wind ripped through the pine trees as I pulled into the community center lot. Packed. Cars lined the road. Phones already out. People expected something. Madeline stood inside in front of a fold-out table, dressed like a politician running unopposed, calm, polished, perfect. Her eyes flicked to me and smiled like she knew I'd already lost. Beside her, 2 men in suits. Her lawyers. The cavalry. I didn't flinch. Leo and I walked in side by side. Gary followed, clutching the red notebook like it was sacred. Madeline tapped the mic and cleared her throat. I know emotions have been high, she began, and I know one member has been spreading misinformation online in a clear attempt to smear this board in. Let's talk about that, actually, I interrupted, walking up. The room shifted. Phones lifted. And then I said the words that shattered the room. Because what I have here isn't misinformation. It's a federal case in the making. You could hear a pin drop. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering slightly as if the building itself were holding its breath. I stood in front of the community center crowd, laptop open, Gary to my right gripping the red notebook like a life preserver, and Leo beside me, jaw set, eyes locked on Madeline. Her mask cracked for the first time. I hit play. The room filled with her voice, smooth, smug, and crystal clear. They're sheep, Gary. You just have to smile and sign with conviction. No one checks anything. They want convenience, not truth. Someone gasped. Phones were already recording. I could see the shimmer of screens catching her face from every angle. I moved to the next clip. I might borrow that cabin while he's away. If the board backs me, who's going to stop me? Her head turned slowly, eyes sweeping the crowd like she was looking for the emergency exit in her own life. Fake, she snapped. Deepfakes are everywhere. This is nothing. Leo held up the USB. Verified metadata. Time-stamped. Original hardware. Good luck spinning that. Let's go further, I said, heart pounding, voice shaking. Not from fear, but from the pressure of truth about to land. Let's talk about Gary. Gary stepped forward, knuckles white on the notebook. I served on the HOA with Madeline at Sunset Estates. I watched her forge bids, launder HOA funds through shell companies. When I questioned her, she blackballed me, ran me out of my own home with lies. I lost everything. He placed the notebook on the table in front of her like it was a holy relic. Every scam, every signature, every dollar. It's all in here. Still, she didn't break. Not entirely. She smiled, tight, performative, and turned to the crowd. This is desperation. You're watching a conspiracy theory unfold. My family is being harassed, publicly, by someone who's clearly unstable and obsessed. That's when Leo stepped forward and clicked the final video. Her voice again, this time recorded off a shaky phone camera, late night, private, intimate, laughing with her husband. That cabin's perfect. No paper trail. HOA oversight gives me cover. Once I get the insurance transfer done, we vanish. Just like before. The silence hit like a hammer. A woman in the front row dropped her pen. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Madeline stepped back, knocking over her chair. "Enough of this," she screamed. "This is a setup. None of this is admissible." The doors opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped inside. Badges out. One spoke calmly but clearly. "Madeline Albright, you're under federal investigation for fraud, wire transfer conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Please come with us." Her eyes darted wildly, to the crowd, to the back door, to her husband standing frozen with his arms limp at his sides. "This isn't happening," she whispered. When they reached for her arms, she pulled back, then collapsed into her husband's chest. Tell them it's all a lie. Tell them Richard. But Richard just stared at her. No words. No rescue. Just hollow disbelief. As the agents cuffed her, I noticed something odd. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even panicked. She looked relieved. And then, under her breath, so low I almost missed it, she muttered, I was tired of running anyway. The next few minutes were a blur. Voices, camera flashes, people flooding out to text friends and neighbors. I just stood still, rooted to the floor, watching the empire she built on fear and forged paper crumble into dust. Leo clapped a hand on my shoulder. You did it. No, I said. We did. Gary looked like he'd aged 10 years in one night. But his shoulders were straighter, his eyes clearer. We stood there in the echoes of everything she tried to bury. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed deep. The cabin was mine again. But more importantly, so was my story. 3 weeks later, I stood barefoot on my porch, coffee in hand, watching fog roll between the pine trees like slow breath through quiet lungs. The air was finally still again. No cars in my driveway. No voices inside my cabin. No strangers lounging on my couch or flipping through my life like it was a magazine they didn't even subscribe to. Just me, the birds, and the soft creak of wood underfoot. It felt earned. The federal charges against Madeline had multiplied. The last I heard, she was facing years for financial fraud, obstruction, and impersonating an officer of legal authority. She tried to flip on her husband, then retracted. The last message I got from her lawyer was a vague threat about privacy and public smear campaigns. I didn't reply. The internet had already moved on mostly. The HOA Karen trend peaked, then faded into memes, then vanished like all online firestorms do. But the impact remained. The subreddit still existed, though it had shifted toward support and community building. People shared stories now, not just revenge, but healing. Funny how something built on outrage could evolve into something gentler. The cabin took a few days to reclaim. I scrubbed every surface, rehung every picture, even replaced the locks, not because I thought anyone would return, but because it symbolized something. A reset, a line in the sand. I invited Leo up that weekend. He brought beer, brisket, and a grin that said he'd grown 10 years in 6 weeks. You're famous, he joked as he threw a burger on the grill. Infamous, I corrected. There's a difference. Gary came too, quieter, still watchful, but lighter than I'd ever seen him. He didn't bring anything but a bottle of old whiskey and a folded piece of paper. During the fire pit hours, after the laughter died down, he handed it to me. It was a letter of resignation, 10 years old, the one he'd written back when Madeline had destroyed his life. He never sent it, said he wanted me to have it. Proof that sometimes the fight doesn't end with a bang. Sometimes it just fades. Feels like closing a door, he said, and tossed the letter into the fire. We watched it curl and blacken until it disappeared into the embers. The HOA board voted in a new president, someone I'd barely spoken to before all this. Marianne, a retired schoolteacher with a spine of steel and no tolerance for drama. They invited me to run. I said no. I didn't need power. I just needed peace. I kept the red notebook, though, not to wave around, not to weaponize, just to remind myself that truth, when kept quiet, festers. But when shared, when witnessed, it can crack even the most perfect masks. And Madeline's mask had been flawless, until it wasn't. A week after her arrest, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a soft, leather-bound diary. Hers. The pages were meticulous. Not full of schemes or gloating, but fear. Panic. Control spiraling into chaos. Childhood wounds dressed up in pearls and policies. Somewhere between the lines of HOA fines and legal threats, I could see a terrified woman trying to keep the world from collapsing. It didn't make me feel pity. It made me feel clarity. Sometimes people become monsters not out of malice, but out of fear of their own unraveling. I didn't post it, didn't leak it, didn't use it to squeeze one last ounce of revenge. Justice had already spoken, and honestly, I didn't need the world to hate her more. I just needed them to stop believing her version of my life. That night, I recorded one final video. No drama, no expose, just me, in front of the fire. I've learned a lot these past few weeks, I said, voice low. About power, about community, about how quickly silence becomes complicity. If someone tells you you're crazy in your own house, don't just whisper back. Roar. Show them the truth, even if your hands shake when you hold it. I paused. I got my cabin back. But more than that, it got my voice back. And you can too. If you're going through something like this, don't give up, even when it feels like no one's listening. The fire crackled behind me, because eventually someone always is. And with that, I turned off the camera. The screen went dark, and for the first time in a long time, so did the noise.